welcome to the keynote speak of the Indo-German Forum on Cities and Climate, which will take place over the next 2 days. My name is Dr. Katja Lasch, and I am the director of the German Center for Research and Innovation, and I'm very, very glad to host the keynote session of the Indo-German Forum on Cities and Climate today. It's the first time that we are going digital for the forum, and you have seen in the program that the forum covers multiple aspects from climate modeling for cities, urban water body management, air pollution, coastal cities, basic research, applied research, but also citizen science is addressed. I'm extremely glad that our keynote address today is delivered by Dr. Eva Ottendoerfer, who is the head of the Morgenstadt network. And I think that's a very nice fit, as the Morgenstadt initiatives, and we will hear about it, brings together cities, companies, research institutions to develop and pilot solutions for sustainable urban transformation. And we find the topics, such topics as mobility, smart governance, data, and digitalization. So I'm really glad, and I want to mention that Ms. Ottendoerfer is working for the IAO Fraunhofer Institute, and Fraunhofer is one of the supporters of the German Center for Research and Innovation, who is organizing the conference. Before we start the presentation, let me introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Eva Ottendoerfer is the head of the Morgenstadt network of the Fraunhofer Society and leader of the team of urban governance innovation at the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering, and that's placed in Stuttgart, and she's connected today from Stuttgart. At the same time, she heads the Fraunhofer representation at the Urban Development Initiative in Eindhoven, which is in the Netherlands, an initiative for accelerating innovations in urban sustainable development in the Brainport region in the Netherlands. And she also leads the Urban Data Partnership, a project to support German cities in the digital transformation. So she's active in various fields, and she will tackle a couple of these issues in her speak. Eva Ottendoerfer holds a PhD in International Relations from the Goethe University in Frankfurt am Main in Germany, and before her engagement at Fraunhofer, she worked as a postdoc at the Goethe University and as a researcher at the Peace Research Institute in Frankfurt. So I welcome Ms. Ottendoerfer. I want to extend here too long, not to take the time from the keynote. So Ms. Ottendoerfer, welcome to the Forum on Cities and Climate. Thank you again for delivering the keynote, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Katja. Thank you very much. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very glad that I can speak today on this very important event on cities and climate. I'm absolutely convinced that we need more events like this and more exchange, especially international exchange, on how we can create sustainable urban transformation, how we can develop better solutions to adapt to climate change, but also to mitigate climate change, and also how we can find new ways to implement these solutions. And this is exactly what the Morgenstadt initiative is here for, so to say. We have been founded in 2012 already. The initiative has since then developed its very own understanding of city systems and of finding ways to trigger and enhance sustainable urban transformation. And I will give you, first of all, a short overview of the Morgenstadt approach itself, so to say, the network and the initiative, and what makes us, I think, still special up until today. And then I will give you a short overview of the Morgenstadt framework, which is our approach to a systemic analysis of cities. In addition, I have also brought with me some slides or some information about another project we are developing at the moment, the innovation program on climate neutral cities. However, this is only in case we still have some time left. I can also speak about this program, but in my talk, in my keynote, I will concentrate on the Morgenstadt framework. So, the Morgenstadt approach. I think I don't have to bore you with the facts we all agree about, so to say. We all know about the state the world is in at the moment. And I think we all agree on this, and that's why we are here for today. So on the one hand, cities present the major challenges for sustainable transformation. Most of the CO2 emissions are already created in cities, and most 3/4 of the energy consumption nowadays takes place in cities. So they are a major challenge, but at the same time, at the Morgenstadt initiative, we consider them also the major vehicles for addressing climate change and for finding solutions to mitigate it. So when it comes to urban development, especially in the 21st century, we have very global trends cities have to deal with, cities have to adapt to, like climate change, of course, but also migration and demographic change. By now, this poses a challenge to any country. We have major transformations going on, like digital transformation, which poses challenges for organizations in general, but also the economy and for private persons and households. And we have technological innovations. They challenge traditional urban paths and urban cycles, but of course, they also present some major solutions for our problems. And what we did in the Morgenstadt initiative is, sorry, that was a bit too fast. We developed this systemic approach because we decided to first analyze why some cities across the globe are notably more successful in their sustainable transformation. So how are they actually able to enhance factors that mitigate climate change, implement solutions faster, and so on and so forth? Our major insight from this analysis that we conducted in 2011 until 2012 was that it is exactly the cities that have understood to focus on the interfaces between different sectors, who are able to bring together different actor groups and who are able to connect between different infrastructures, which can bring about urban transformation faster and more successful than others. So this insight has led us to also take up this view and to develop this very systemic approach where we focus on the interfaces between different sectors and where we take a look at how transformation in one sector might influence other sectors, where, for example, the support of certain actors might have a backlash for other actors, and so on and so forth. And we focus on the processes within cities and not so much on their borders. What factors have an impact on the city, but where does the city also can change things and has an impact on different sectors? Well, until now, this still sounds very theoretical for you. What you need to know is, as Katja Lasch has already pointed out, the Morgenstadt initiative has this approach of bringing together cities, companies or industry partners and research institutions to develop these solutions and conduct these analyses together. So we have the innovation push, so to say, from the industry partners. We have the expertise and the analytical frameworks from our research partners, and we have the practice insights from the municipalities and cities to develop these solutions together. Of course, most of the solutions are still technological, but we also focus very much on governance innovations and on social innovations, because focusing on interfaces also means you have to make the city be able to focus on interfaces. For example, to set up intersectoral work groups, which definitely is a governance topic and is still very, very relevant until today. So within our Morgenstadt initiative, we have brought different sectors, actors, and infrastructures together in these 11 innovation fields that we have defined. You can see them below on the slide. Most of these innovation fields bring together different approaches and different perspectives in order to look on one practice field. And this is how our research partners can define new projects together and then invite industry partners and cities to conduct projects together with them. So what's the goal of all of this? Most of the time I have used the term sustainable urban transformation up until now, but of course this term is a very broad term. Pretty much everybody has a different understanding of what does this mean. So I want to shortly introduce our understanding of it. What is our vision of a city of the future? And for us, we have defined these 4 pillars of sustainability, so to say, because it's not only, as I said, on technological innovations, and it's not only on zero emissions. Of course, climate neutrality is a very important point, but the 4 pillars we have defined bring together maximum livability in terms of social equity. The city of the future should be a city in which all social groups and any generation can actually find their place and live together. That's a very important part. So we also focus on affordability of a city. Is it a place where only rich people can live and the others cannot afford it? Or is it possible, are there programs to support people with lower income to have to live their life in the city? The second point, if I go clockwise, the second point is resilience, which has, of course, gained tremendous importance over the last year. But even before that, resilience, of course, is very important for cities. We define resilience not only as resilience against natural disasters, but also against what we have witnessed now, like pandemics, but economic shocks, for example, social upheavals like man-made disasters are also a very big threat to cities, and that's why you have to consider them, and a city has to be able to mitigate or lower the risk for such events. Then the third pillar is the zero emission pillar, or the green pillar, what we say. It includes not only the emission topic, but also waste management, water management, for example, how the city deals with its natural resources in general. And the last pillar that we have defined pretty much as most important because it supports the other pillars in their development is the innovation factors of a city. In how far is, first of all, the population innovative in terms of new patents developed every year, but in how far does the city also support innovation by creating living labs, by setting up frameworks for supporting startups? Is there a university in place, for example? In how far is a city able to support its population in being innovative? For us, all these 4 pillars need to come together in order to create a livable, green and sustainable city of the future. Over the last years, we had 3 work programs already. Now we are in our fourth work program of the Morgenstadt initiative. And what we have defined as our major focus is, on the one hand, of course, research and development. I mean, that's what we are here for with our research partners. There is still a need for new innovations and for new solutions. But one other very important topic that we are focusing on at the moment is the market design, because we have realized that there are a lot of solutions out there already, very good solutions, which can help us very much mitigate climate change. But the question is, how can we make them affordable to cities? So our focus is on developing financing vehicles or financing programs for making sustainable urban transformation affordable for cities in Germany, but at the same time in Europe and globally. The other focus is on global scalability, because what we have also witnessed is that a lot of solutions and technological innovation still takes place in Europe or in the United States and Australia. And the question is, how can we bring together different analytical tools in order to make them globally scalable? How can we find a common language across the globe so we can develop solutions together more easily? And one major point in this program is also to adapt the framework that I'm going to present to you now to a global scale and to cities of the global south. So my point, the Morgenstadt framework, what we have developed for a systemic analysis of cities, for especially focusing on these interfaces between different sectors, between different infrastructures and actors in a city, and for developing roadmaps for urban transformation for a city. This framework has as a very basis a DPSIR analysis, so to say. I am quite sure that everybody of you is familiar with the concept of DPSIR analysis, so to say. We have the driving forces, the pressure indicators, indicators for the state of, in this case, cities, impact indicators, and response indicators. And that's what we have defined for a city in general. You can see it here on these slides, bringing together some of the driving forces, some of the impact, and some of the state indicators. We collect them for every city, and then we have, in order to have a closer look on the state of a city and how the city can address sustainability issues, we have developed 85 plus action fields to have a closer analysis of what is actually going on in the city. Not only what is the state of the city, but how does the city act, so to say. 85 plus means that we are adapting these action fields for every analysis we are conducting. We are able to focus on specific sectors, for example, in projects where this is required from the financing institution of the project, but also from our partners, for example, from cities who say like, we don't have the resources to conduct a full investigation, a full analysis, but we are very interested, for example, in the mobility issues. So we bring this sector to the front, and we still focus on the interfaces, but of this very specific sector, so to say. So we can reduce the framework, but we can also expand it. That's what the plus is for. We can also define new action fields, also in terms of how a city develops over time. So what we do with all this data is we bring it together in 3 different layers, so to say. First, we have the indicator analysis. And then we bring this together with the action fields and look how the indicators change over time, or what the city does to address these indicators, so to say, or to address its very own state. So we have these questions, we have defined these questions: what is the performance of the city? Why and how do things work, or sometimes they don't work? And it's also who is involved in making things work, and who might not support the change, but also hinder it. And how does the city address sustainability over time? For us, what is very important is we put this analysis in a format we have labeled the City Lab, the Morgenstadt City Lab. By now, there are many city labs, so to say, pretty much everywhere. But what makes our Morgenstadt City Lab special is it's not a living laboratory. The lab means that we set up a co-creation process within the city to bring together all the relevant stakeholders, not only from the city, not only from the administration, but also from industry partners, from civil society, from other organizations, to not only give them an insight into how our analysis works and to have their support for gathering data, but also for developing solutions and this roadmap together. What we have found out over the years is indicators, quantitative indicators can help you a lot, but you definitely need qualitative insights from interviews with stakeholders who have their very specific insights in order to get a good a good perspective on the city and to be able to develop really helpful and efficient solutions, so to say. So that's what we do. This co-creation process starts from the very beginning, but what we do is we first gather the data and we analyze it, and then we bring it to the city, and this is where the lab, so to say, starts. Usually we spend 2 to 4 weeks within a city. By now we have also started to do it virtually for cities, but usually we went to the city and we stayed there 2 to 4 weeks to conduct all the interviews and to conduct several workshops for developing a sustainability roadmap together. So this analytical framework, our Morgenstadt framework, has a focus on the interaction of technologies, business models, and governance approaches. And we do this in a co-creation process together with the city people, representatives of all the groups, relevant groups within the city. What you can see in the red box is that we actually adapt the framework and the analysis. No, sorry, you see it in the blue box. You adapt the analysis to the city context or to the project context, as I already explained, to the specific insights that a city is most interested in. But what we have done over time is that we also integrated specific climate change aspects, such as impact, adaptation, and mitigation actions of the city. In 2012, this was much less relevant as it is today. So we are adapting and reworking, constantly adapting and reworking the Morgenstadt framework in order to fit the demands and needs of cities in their sustainability work. So what comes out of all of this, so to say? In the end, a city lab focus on creating its very own sustainability city profile, in which the drivers, barriers, and opportunities within the city are highlighted. Bringing that all together means that most of the time many actors are already aware of them, but not everybody, and not everybody has the same insights. So we bring these actors together to develop a common view on these issues. And we have a detailed analysis of specific actors relevant. Well, for this, in this case, it was Sparks. It's one of the projects we are conducting it at the moment, so to say. And what we do is we create a catalog for solution-oriented project outlines, which are then further developed in a roadmap for implementation. And we also, as I will lay out in the following, we also have projects where we also bring with us the financing instruments for implementing these solutions already. So I will just go back one time. As you can, here we are. As you can see, the whole City Lab process is accompanied by capacity building among local actors. At the moment, we do that in webinars. So usually we do that in workshops within the city. we also search for financing possibilities, so to say, or it's already part of the project to implement these solutions that we have laid out, and this very co-creation process. So here we are with the expected outcomes of a city lab. And usually this roadmap brings together 5 to 10 solutions. That also depends very much on the project context, from which a city can select itself which solution is most important, and they also have the means and capacity to implement it. Just to give you a short overview, this is a world map with all the city labs or the Morgenstadt frameworks that we have implemented so far. And one of the current projects where we use the Morgenstadt framework and the city lab, for example, is the Morgenstadt Global Initiative. It's a project funded by the German Ministry for the environment and for the environment. And within the project, we apply the Morgenstadt framework to a city in Mexico, Saltillo. You see it on the map. A city in Peru, Piura, and a city in India, which is Kochi. So within this project, we have been, first of all, adapting the whole Morgenstadt framework with all its indicators and the underlying benchmarks and so on and so forth to cities in the global south and their situation and environment, which is still different from, so to say, a city like Berlin in Germany. And we have also focused within the project on, first of all, climate change mitigation and CO2 emission reduction. So within the 85 plus action fields, this was the specific focus that we applied within the project. And just to give you a short overview for Kochi, I think that might be interesting for many people who are present at the moment. For the project roadmap or the solution roadmap that we have developed for Kochi, focuses on 3 measures. One is creating a sustainable and smart city neighborhood within the city to pilot, but also to implement specific solutions like solar panels on roofs. The second measure was it's still ongoing, is a solarized food cooling system for the market and for households, so they need less energy. And especially the energy monitoring and creating a long-term energy roadmap was also a very specific need identified for the city. So that's what we are at for the moment. And now we have the chance within the project to also implement one solution. We are cooperating with the Frankfurt School of Finance within the project, and they have been developing specific financing instruments, not only for implementing a solution, but also for running it over time to make it really sustainable. And now it's on the city to decide which measure is most important for them and which one to implement. So this was a short overview. I think I will skip the other project I wanted to present to you, but you can come back to me at any time and I give you more information about that. But just to give you a short overview, this is the team I am working with as a head of the initiative. So please contact us at any time, and we can also give you more information about our projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ottendoerfer, for this wonderful presentation and insight into the Morgenstadt initiative, and I think a really good clamp, a really good clamp for the conference as are approaching a lot of different topics. We have a couple of questions coming in, and I would like to ask the first question that is there among different stakeholders which one's leadership is of particular importance and what may reflect? So among different stakeholders, which one should take the leadership, or is there a leadership of specific importance?
I think it's very clear that the leadership has to come from the city administration itself. And that is also the challenge, because for this, the city administration needs good people who are driving or striving for change, striving for urban transformation. But if this is the case, if they are the right people in the right spot within the city administration, we have witnessed that they can change so many things, and that they can change things really fundamentally. Of course, an administration is always a quite slow body, and not everybody might be open for change. But if a city manages to, for example, to set up a intersectoral work group within the city administration, where heads from different teams come together and they develop roadmaps together, we have witnessed that this is the key to sustainable urban transformation, definitely.
Thank you so much. There is a second question regarding the indicators. You mentioned that you developed more than 85 indicators and action fields. So what is the difference between pressure and state indicator?
Yeah, actually, we have been fighting over this question too some years ago. It's first of all, I mean, that's a decision you have to take within each project. I'm quite sure you could do it differently than we are doing, but usually the state indicators focus more on what is actually going on within the city, whereas the pressure indicators can also include pressure which is coming from outside, so to say. It's not only focusing on economy, for example, or economic situation, but it can also, the pressure can also relate to what's going on in different cities, for example, or within the region.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now comes a longish question. What would be your views on implementing climate resilience strategies on urban-rural fringe areas, peri-urban, as in many countries, the policies for implementation in both rural and urban areas are different. And these peri-urban areas are quite neglected in terms of focused actions. So the question is if there can be followed similar strategy as we follow for the urban rural areas, or one has to work towards a different methodology.
That's a really good question, and I'm afraid I won't have a straight answer to that, because we have also realized that this is definitely a topic, especially or maybe the topic is more important in the global south, but there is definitely a challenge, because of course you cannot just apply one urban methodology, so to say, on these areas. So what we have developed so far, or what we have discussed so far, I wouldn't want to call it a development yet, is that you have to combine these methodologies for rural areas and urban areas. I think that's the only way. It's also in terms of efficiency, developing its very own new methodology might not be helpful and take up many resources, but a combination of different methodologies focusing on rural and on urban areas might be a solution. That's what I can say so far.
Thank you so much. And I think if you want, the question comes from Christoph Woiwode, discussed it further. Ms. Ottendoerfer is a bit later also in the networking lounge. I think for closing up or for finishing, there is a really interesting question. I think that's a good question also for the whole conference, which we are having over the next 2 days. So are you seeing main differences between the cities in the global south and in Europe?
I'm sorry, there was a hiccup in the connection. I didn't understand it, and I don't see it in the list. Can you repeat the question?
I will repeat the question, yeah. So the question was, and I think that's a really interesting question, who is, as we are having an Indo-German Forum running, if you see a main difference between the cities in the global south and in Europe.
Well, yes, I do. I do see some big differences. Of course, that's why we have decided to adapt the framework, so to say. Of most of the differences concern the benchmarks. However, I mean, we have not developed completely new indicators for the global south for this adaptation. Sorry, but we have changed the benchmarks. For example, when it comes to air quality, the challenges are higher. When it comes to wastewater management, of course, we cannot generalize it. That might not be helpful as well, but the challenges or the systems in some cities in the global south are not as developed, so you have the chance to implement. It might be worthwhile to implement completely new solutions, which is also a very big chance compared to cities in Europe where the systems might be there for years, but they have been redone, retrofitted over time, over and over again. And so the changes can be implemented only in a very small dimension, so to say. So I definitely see a difference, but what we did is we have adjusted the benchmarks for the indicators to get a better overview. Another example is public transport for in cities in Europe. Usually, the public transport is owned by the city or by municipal utility companies, and it's a lot more affordable. So these are the differences, and that's how we have adjusted our benchmarks for getting a good overview of what's going on in the city and to be able to compare it with different cities in the global south. But also to be more fair, so to say, to what is going on in cities in the global south.
Okay, maybe one final question from my side. So if I'm an Indian researcher being now inspired by your talk, maybe want to work with the framework, take it forward, probably also we have also tendencies from Nepal, I just see. How I take it forward? Just I write you an email, or how could I take it forward if I would be interested in implementing and working with that framework?
Yes, I would invite you all to write me or my colleagues an email, and then we can get into contact and discuss how we can apply the framework in the best way for which cities it makes sense, and to develop projects together. Most of the time, of course, I mean it's a big framework. It's a quite a long analysis that takes place. The co-creation process is also quite long. There needs to be a certain budget for such an application of the framework, but we also have a lot of experience in creating projects to get this budget, in finding industry partners who are interested in implementing this project. And just to give you an overview, so that's why most of our industry partners are actually partner of the Morgenstadt, because they are absolutely convinced of the Morgenstadt framework, and they are very interested in supporting us in applying it to new cities in very different contexts all across the globe.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ottendoerfer. I I think it was a really interesting keynote. This framework covered a couple of things we have seen and which we will also discuss over the next 2 days on the panel. So thanks you too much. Thank you also to the audience. Today and tomorrow we will discuss aspects of cities and climate. 35 speakers will give insights in their research projects and discuss with the audience. I want to draw your attention to the audience to the networking lounge where you could meet researchers, policymakers, stakeholders from the field. You could talk to them in a group chat or in one-to-one chat, and it would be really, really nice if you could fill up your research profiles on the platform, so that's better for the other people to find you, and then you could easily connect. Last but not least, and maybe you did not explore that, is the virtual fair. We have 25 institutions present, their projects in the field, and they will offer general information. And for instance, also the Morgenstadt initiative is present at the Fraunhofer booth. So maybe have a look after the panels, or during the panels and have a look into the fairs, talk to researchers, talk to representatives of the institutions over there. The fair is open today till 5:30, and we will open tomorrow at 12:30 Indian Standard Time. So have a look at this opportunity too. And if you want to communicate us using social media, don't forget our hashtag Indo-German Forum so that we could connect. So thanks again to Ms. Ottendoerfer for this keynote and for this introduction into the topic of cities and climate. We close the keynote session and I wish everybody a fruitful conference, fruitful virtual digital networking, inspiring talks and discussions, and would really encourage everybody to take advantage and benefit of the platform we are offering. Thanks so much for joining us today, and goodbye.